Hey, everybody. This is Michael Allen with the Absolutely Podcast, the podcast about interviewing really great people in the San Luis Obispo area who are unusually good at keeping their customers unusually happy. And in this podcast, what we're going to do is interview David Pascolla. He's a wedding photographer here in San Luis Obispo, in the San Luis Obispo area. And one thing that's really remarkable about him is just a number of positive reviews he has, and how happy he is at being able to make his customers happy. So yeah, let's dig into it. I'd like to introduce to you guys David Pascolla. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's dive into this. So for those of us who are listening to this wonderful podcast, so David and I met each other in person a long time ago, actually.
Wow.
I dug into it. I don't remember the exact date, but it was at Morro Bay, and you were doing an engagement shoot for a couple.
Okay.
And somehow, some way, I convinced you to let me shadow it, to watch.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That must have been a few years ago.
It was more than a few years ago. When was that? I think that was when I was just cracking into it. It must have been around 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 2009. And I remember that day there was actually a surf competition going on at Morro Bay. And I thought that was so cool, but I also thought it was so cool that there's this wedding thing. And I was like so torn because I was like, this is so awesome. There's like two amazing things happening right now.
Okay.
And one's career development and one's just like this hobby.
Yeah.
But that was really fun. And I was really appreciative of like how generous you were to let me like just almost a total random stranger just come in and be a part of your life. And get in between, not in between, but like be a part of that experience. And there was almost like I talked to so many wedding photographers, and some of them were like, they would literally charge me to be a shadow.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Like literally, like I would have had to pay a couple $1,000s to shadow them. I'm not going to say who it was.
Yeah.
But with you, you're like, just like, come on over and check it out. I was like, what? This is great.
Yeah. I think when I first started wedding photography, it was more of people were somewhat protective, but then the whole philosophy on that changed. And I think if you didn't change, you'd just become a dinosaur, and you'd be overly protective, and it became a real community. And the more you gave away, the more you got back. So I've always had that philosophy, just give it away and not worry about somebody coming in on your territory or whatever. And it is more blessed to give than to receive. So it all comes back around.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're sitting here, so that's cool.
Yeah, no, that's great. Cool. Well, it's kind of cool how like something from such a long time ago came back and in a way paid itself off.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, I was in the hardware store the other day when you called, and it's like I couldn't picture a face or anything, but yeah.
Cool. Did I look familiar at all when you first came in? It's been such a long time.
Well, you probably didn't have a beard back then?
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was clean shaven back then.
Okay.
It
was a while back. Yeah.
There's this study. They actually said that my background is actually in psychology.
Oh. Okay.
I didn't learn this as a part of my classes, though, but like this is just an aspect of it. And they say that a huge part, I forget what percentage of it is, but it's gigantic, of us recognizing people is actually not based on our facial features, but our hair. So when someone gets a haircut, even just a slight haircut, you really notice it.
Yeah.
And if they shave off their beard or their head or whatever, you don't recognize them, even though their face is the same. And it's the hair.
How funny. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah. Well,
So, let's do a little bit of an introduction for you, David.
Sure.
So this is David Pascolla. Is that the correct pronunciation?
You got it, Michael.
Okay.
Right on.
Right on the first try.
Yeah.
And so in the early years, I'm just reading from this piece of paper that you gave me, and like, you are a very noteworthy guest, because not every guest will actually go out of their way to give me a full report of all the things that I need to do research on.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd save you a little time.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this piece of paper right now, and like one of the very first things right off the bat is like in the early years, you shot a surf trip in Baja. Yeah. How was that?
Well, it wasn't just one. That's how I got the stoke for photography. So I would, living in Southern California, we'd take surf trips down to Baja and up here, Santa Barbara, but mainly a lot of surf trips to Baja. And I was our designated photographer.
Really?
So we'd come back and I'd have slideshows with music, and I decided, wow, I could really get into doing this. So one thing led to another, and I signed up for my first photo class in junior high school, Pierce College in L.A., and I don't know what the heck they were doing, but it was like they were getting into like color theory, and long story short, I ended up failing the class. Failed it. My first
class.
photo class I ever took. And and then fast forward, I went on to went to Cal State Northridge, got a master's in photography, fine art photography, and then ended up teaching photography for 36 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
At Cal Poly?
No, all on the high school level.
Oh, all in the high school level.
Yeah.
At Slow High?
Well, 5 years I taught down in L.A.
Okay.
In Woodland Hills, and then we moved up here in '89, and I taught 31 years at the high school in Atascadero.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And about half of that was all darkroom and film.
Oh, wow.
And just loved it. And then the digital era came along, and started doing that. And we'd still have the darkroom, though. The kids would are familiar with like Oatmeal box or like Pinhole photography?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the kids would make Pinhole cameras out of Oatmeal boxes.
So for those who don't know what that is or how that works, do you want to explain?
Yeah, what it is, Michael, it's we'd take an Oatmeal box and they would make it light tight, and we'd make a little lens out of aluminum foil and a little flap for the shutter. And
how did that lens look if you made it out of aluminum foil?
Sure, it's like a 1 inch by 1 inch square, and the reason they call it a pinhole camera is because it's a little needle that you poke through the aluminum
foil. Okay.
And it's because the
so that's where the light comes in.
Correct, and because the hole is so tiny and small, you have unlimited depth of field or depth of focus. And so you don't really focus anything. You just go outside, and everything from like 1 foot away to, 100 feet is perfectly in focus.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then so they'd go in the dark room and put the photo paper in, and because they curved the photo paper in, you'd get more of a fisheye effect. So it was more of a close-up kind of feel. And then from there, they'd go back into the dark room, and then they'd develop their paper in the dark room.
Wow.
So we even after we put the film cameras away and went all digital, I would still do that assignment. And there's just something magical about the darkroom, as you know. When the kids see their paper come up in the developer, it just there's nothing like it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. There's some. I think there's. Do you think it's because there's so much delayed gratification, and it reinforces that aspect of like a reward for putting in a lot of patience and time?
Yeah. That's a good point. And because of most of them had iPhones or whatever, everything's so instant and they're just snapping. And this is more of a, like you're setting up, taking one exposure at a time. There's and I think they like the digital as well, but there's just something about, I guess it's more of a craft. The darkroom's more of a craft, more of a technique. Mm-hmm. So, and I retired 2 years ago, and all the way up until I retired, we'd still go in the darkroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think there was a quote by, I think it was by Ansel Adams, and he said the process of capturing the photograph is the score, and the darkroom is the symphony.
I like that. Yeah. That's really cool. And that's good you said that, because when I was going to college, what I did, my emphasis was on multiple printing. And there was a guy by the name of Jerry Yulesman. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Jerry Yulesman?
Yes.
No.
He would actually take multiple negatives and with multiple enlargers and then put all his images together.
Yeah.
And it'd be more of a surrealistic kind of scene. And so that's what I started doing at Cal State Northridge. We would have multiple enlargers, print one negative on, say, the bottom half of the print, and then move to the other enlarger and print on the top of the print.
Oh.
And so you'd have this merging. Now, of course, you could do it in Photoshop quite easily, but that was kind of my emphasis back then. But going back, why I shared that is the quote you shared, because capturing the images was one thing, but then when you went into the darkroom, it was a completely different phase of that. And so the darkroom. Cool. Wonderful memories and appreciation for that.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
So those days have mostly been long gone, at least the digital or the film side of it in your career as a wedding photographer. And last year, 2021, you shot your 500th wedding.
Yeah. Everybody always says, well, how did you keep track of all those? And I just, every year when I do my taxes and everything, I keep a running tally of how many weddings I've done.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did it feel? Did it feel like just a normal wedding, or did it feel like a sense of achievement? Did the couple even know it was your 500th wedding?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it just felt like any other wedding.
I'm assuming.
But it was kind of a milestone. Wow, that 500. I've shot a few weddings.
So I have a question. Did you know that was your 500th when you were doing it, or did you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what was that wedding like?
It was most of the weddings I do now are ranch, barn, vineyard type weddings, and it was I think it was at the Cuesta Ranch, which is at the base of Cuesta Grade, and it was a memorable wedding. In fact, I'm doing the couples. They just had their first child, and I'm doing their. Even though I don't do a lot of newborn sessions, but I'm doing their newborn tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool because the owner of the ranch took us out in a Polaris, and after the wedding, we went all up in the hills and did some portraits, and so it was a memorable wedding. Yeah,
wow, that's cool. So speaking of memorable weddings, what's one question that you, with regard to pulling up memories and stuff like that, what's one question that you wish people ask but usually don't?
You mean when I'm interviewing the couple, or before I actually take their...
Yeah, so here, let me pull it back actually a little bit. So
sure.
So when a couple is interviewing you, maybe
yes,
what's the most common question you usually get? I'll start there.
Sure, my style.
What's your style?
In other words, they're asking, is it going to be contrived? Is it going to be, commando, telling us what to do? And my response is I like to keep it natural. And I think when you do I always like to explain to them family shots, group shots, those are important pictures.
Yeah.
So it's more of a subtle directive approach when I'm doing those types of photos. And then, like during the reception, I tell them, "Hey, I'm a fly in a wall. You don't even need to look over." And I love it when they get their photos and they say, "Gosh, David, we didn't even see you take those." And that always that's my goal, is to keep it really natural and simple.
Yeah. I think the best photographs are the ones that get out of the way of being the attention, and they actually go directly towards the feeling of that moment.
Yes, definitely.
Almost like a window. You don't want to see the window. You want to see through the window.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Cool.
And that's how they want to remember their day too. They want to remember the moments and how they felt. And I always try to just make it a really fun experience for them. Yeah, I love it. It typically, like the bride will say, maybe before we do their engagement session, they'll say, "Oh, my fiance, he doesn't really feel comfortable in front of a camera," and I love that.
Really?
To me, it's a wonderful challenge, and I love to kind of disarm them and prove to them that, you know what, this is a lot of fun. And I would say, after a lot of our sessions, they do say, like, "Wow, this was a lot easier than I thought." So it goes back to a lot of you mirroring to them what you want. And it's a lot of connection and just not even start shooting right away, just chatting with them and getting them to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So where did that personality in you come out? Was it intentional, or do you feel like it's just a natural byproduct? Like that part of you that just has this echo of mindfulness and calmness, which you exude just naturally.
Oh, thank you, Michael.
But where did that come from?
It could just be the personality that God gave me, and it is so funny. In my notes to you, I told you I'm an ambivert. Have you ever heard of that term before?
Yeah, I'm an ambivert too.
Oh, are you really?
But for those who don't know, it's that person that can dance between being an extrovert and an introvert.
Exactly.
But they kind of need both.
Yeah. And I think I've always leaned more on the introvert side. And when somebody, the guy who got me going in this whole arena of wedding photography, I just thought, oh my gosh, no way would I ever go up and, like, at the ceremony and stand in front of everybody and take their, have everybody looking at me. Well, in reality, they're not looking at you, the photographer. They could give a rip about you. But nevertheless, I kind of cut my teeth on wedding photography. And it really kind of forced me to come out of myself a bit. Mm-hmm. And even when you have, doing the post-ceremony formals and everybody's looking at you and wanting direction. And so it was a really good creative challenge for me. And it kind of brought me out of myself. And so I'm a self-proclaimed ambivert.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. Nice to meet another one, too.
I know. It gets me curious, though. Have you taken the Myers-Briggs personality test?
I think I did a long time ago. And my wife and I, a couple years, we started doing the whole Enneagram deal.
A lot of people are doing that now.
Oh, my gosh. And what's so funny, Michael, check this out. So we have 3 sons. And so I'm a 5. My wife's a 6. Our youngest son is a 7, our middle son is an 8, and our oldest son's a 9. What? So 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
No way.
Go figure that. Yeah. But no, I identify more with a number 5, an Enneagram 5. And
for those who are not familiar, what's the 5?
Sure. A 5s tends to be, they do a lot of research. Like, before they do anything, they'll research. Yeah. They like their privacy. They like their independence. They tend to, like, my wife's a 6. She gets her energy from being around people. And like I could go to a party or whatever and have a great time, but sometimes if I overstay that party, I could go away drained.
Yeah.
So in other words, I get my energy from alone time. And I don't like to isolate or anything. I love, getting in social situations, but I get a lot of my creative energy just by being alone.
Yeah.
Walking, reading, whatever. Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
If I were to guess what your Myers-Briggs is,
Oh, yeah.
I would say it could be an INFJ.
Oh, okay.
Because you're incredibly well organized. I mean, like this thing right here is like this piece of paper I have right here. It's like just bullet points of your whole life, and it's like somehow empathetic and kind at the same time.
Yeah.
But then also you like to get your energy somehow, or you like to spend your energy with people, but regain it alone.
Amen. That's you said that perfectly.
And that's the epitome of an INFJ.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're the most extroverted introvert.
Huh. Okay.
And I think a wedding photographer, that's the fly on the wall, is like a perfect
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Cool. So currently, what do we got? So you do a handful of weddings every year, family and portrait photography. But your new thing that you're actually transitioning into, you're kind of fading wedding photography. It sounds like that industry. Well, before we get into your Wavescape stuff, which I find really fascinating.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
For those of you who are listening, you're gonna have to check out his website. We'll give it a little details for the website in a bit, but. The wedding photography industry. So what's happening right now? Like, what would you say happened since COVID regulations came into play in 2020? It was like March of 2020, right?
Yeah.
And how has your business affected from that day forward?
Well, in regards to weddings, the faucet was just kind of turned off because all the venues you'd go to, they were closed down, were very limited.
Right.
So I think the first 6 months things got real quiet.
Yeah.
Then after that, then the venues would have like 75 people or less. So the whole landscape definitely changed. And it's kind of funny, myself and I've talked to other wedding photographers, and we've actually kind of embraced the smaller wedding.
Really?
It's more simple. It was just more of an intimate affair. And now things are pretty much back to the way
normal.
Pre-pandemic.
Do you know of any... Like, did the industry get affected in a negative way in terms of like a lot of photographers went out of business? Because some of them I've been trying to call for this podcast, and like their website's gone. Their phone number isn't there anymore.
Yeah. I don't. I have, I stay in contact with some other wedding photographers. Some have still been plugging along and are actually doing really, really well now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do, I don't really like to do more than 4 or 5 weddings a year, but I still love doing family portrait sessions.
Yeah.
It's a great way to connect with people and
So when you were at your peak for wedding photography, how many weddings were you doing a year?
Oh gosh. Well, keep in mind I was teaching full time.
Okay.
And when I first started in the early 90s, I was doing up to 40 weddings a year.
40.
And teaching full-time and raising 3 boys with my wife. Yeah. So I remember there was one weekend where I did an engagement session Friday evening, did a wedding Saturday morning in San Luis, drove to Cayucas to do another wedding. And then on the way home from that wedding on Saturday, I did an engagement session in Morro Bay. And then on Sunday, I woke up and had another wedding in Cambria and then did an engagement session on the way home from that. needless to say, I felt like I'd been run over by a truck on Monday. But yeah, I had years like that. And then eventually I was doing about 20 weddings a year. I just kept raising my prices and the numbers would go down. And I just find it's just a long day standing on my feet for 9 hours at a shot. And I still love it, but I'm not aggressively marketing myself as a wedding photographer.
Got it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you just kind of like naturally let the customers sort of dwindle down and focusing on the things that you care about the most.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So when you were doing your wedding photography, you learned things about the trade that you wouldn't learn unless you were actually doing this for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got an interesting question for you.
Yeah.
Why, or what's one thing that only wedding photographers know about that the rest of the world is totally oblivious to?
That's a good question. I would just say probably after the wedding, the post-processing of the images. And I just don't think a lot of the people know how that all takes place, how we wind up with 2,000 to 3,000 photos and dwindle it down to 500 or 600 photos.
Yeah.
I just don't, all the behind the scenes, the preparation, the equipment, and
computer.
Yeah, that
monitor.
comes to mind. Yeah.
I wonder how people actually think it's like.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in the film days, it was probably pretty easy. They just think, well, you shot the wedding, you sent the film off, got the prints back.
It's done, no Photoshop, really.
I know. And you know, I one thing, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but the whole the technical side of things, the post-processing side, it was when digital came along. I did film for about 15 years, and then digital came along, and it was almost intoxicating, the amount.
Intoxicating?
Yes, and in regards to getting on the computer and realizing what you could do with an image. I mean, it was incredible. But then as time went on, I realized the question for myself was not what I can do to an image, but what I should do to an image. And that makes a world of difference because most of the time, unless I'm photographing another creative photographer's wedding, most people don't even realize that maybe you bumped the contrast up by a third, or you adjusted the color one way or another. People, they don't even notice that. So I think the whole digital thing is just could be a real time suck for people. And it really sidetracks them really from being out there doing what they really love to do. And instead they're spending 20 hours in front of the computer to process a wedding that they really don't need to be doing. So I've been a real advocate of that, to really just keep it simple and organic. And that kind of segues right into the equipment that I use. And
What kind of equipment do you use?
Well, good question.
So keep in mind, this is 2022. It's like such a fluid.
I just, about a year ago, I took the leap to the mirrorless deal, and I shoot with a Canon R5. And my wave photography, which we could talk about in a little bit. But so all my weddings and my portraits, Michael, I use the R5. I used to use and I still have the 5D Mark III, but I just shoot with a 24-70 zoom L series.
That's a sharp lens.
Yeah, and I could literally, I mean, unless I'm at Santa Margarita Ranch where there's, a lot of people, and sometimes I'll pull the zoom out, but basically it's just the 24-70. And it's just this golden fit for me. In fact, I remember one wedding, I didn't even take the camera bag out of the trunk of my car. I don't even have a strap. I just have the camera body in my right hand with the lens and shoot the entire wedding with that.
The whole wedding.
Yeah,
With just
I
one
mean,
lens.
it has dual slots, so you're backing yourself up.
Sure, yeah.
But so what I have found when I first started, I'd take tripods, I'd take several different lenses and camera bodies, and it kind of goes back to that whole Zen, being in the moment kind of thing. And I realized that I could capitalize on my creativity and my technique by keeping it incredibly simple and not getting sidetracked with a bunch of artificial lighting, with tripods, with different lenses. I never understood why people had to have like 5 or 6 different lenses. But everybody flows differently. Mm-hmm. But I just know for me, when I simplified my gear, I was able to be more present and more in the moment and truly connect with my clients.
Yeah, it sounds like your personality just naturally has a disposition towards gravitating towards mindfulness.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
That's just how you, where you like to go.
It is. It is. In fact, even for when I have a wedding or even a portrait shoot, but mainly weddings, to me, it's all about alignment. It's all about, waking up that day and just breathing and what I drink and eat. And I'm just really giving myself to preparing my body, my soul, my spirit. So when I show up at the wedding, I could be very relaxed. Of course, you always get a little nervous before each wedding, but when I show up, because I'm prepared, I'm in the state of alignment and flow, that it's real easy to connect with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not stressed. I'm not sidetracked. I'm not thinking about 5 different things. It's like I could just really be in the moment and be present. And because of that, I could, and it doesn't always work perfectly, but I could focus on just being a very creative. My prayer as I drive to a wedding is like, oh, God, give me a technical mind. Like I want to be at the top of my game technically. And then I want to have a creative heart too. So, that's ultra important to me. Yeah.
So is there anybody who you look up to that has this mindfulness that you use as an anchor point, like any parent figures or anyone in your family or friends growing up? Or is this just a natural part of who you are?
I can't really say other people I know. There's some people I read their books and listen to their podcasts and things like that. And they tend to operate in a place of stillness and rest. Like they make rest a priority. Yeah. And they're really good about having a knowledge of timing and time. And in other words, it's, I guess, one of my desires and goals is to have a knowledge of time and to do the right thing at the right time in the right way at the right place for the right reason.
Okay.
And if I know I'm doing those things, I'm not getting sidetracked with things I really shouldn't be doing. Sometimes the good could be the enemy of the best kind of thing. So if I'm making rest, if I'm making peace, and I'm making joy a priority for my life, then things tend to flow a lot easier, and I feel like I'm more where I need to be.
Sounds like you're the byproduct of years of very good therapy.
Yeah.
My background's in psychology, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So, interesting question for you then, at least one that's in my head, is like,
sure.
Who's one person that you have always looked up to?
In creatively or just all around?
Like another human being that's living or has lived in your life or is a part of your life in some way. Or, it could be Ansel Adams. I mean, I wouldn't really necessarily be somebody who's still alive. But,
I would say my pastor, Yeah, his name's Mark Perry, and he's just been a real inspiration to me. And we're about the same age, and yeah.
Yeah. So religion's been a part of your life since you were born, or you kind of fell into it
No,
later?
since about high school. And it's never really been a religion. I was raised Catholic, and it was very religious kind of thing. But then when I was in my tail end of high school, I was a real partier, and I basically began a relationship with God. And so from that point on, it was more of a relationship as opposed to a religion.
Mm. That's where you really embraced it.
Yeah, and I've never really looked at it as an arduous discipline or anything. To me, it's been more about delight.
Yeah.
It's like if you're delighting in something, whether it's your relationship with God or anything, when you're delighting in something, it segues into discipline. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people get that reversed. They think, well, if I do a lot of discipline, and it'll turn into delight. But really, you look at some of these Olympic athletes with the Olympics going on right now, and you could talk to some of them, and you could say, wow, it must be so hard getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go to the ice rink or whatever. Such discipline. But some of those people say, well, it's really not. It's something I really love to do. It's something I'm passionate about and I find delight in. So because of that, you tend to you give yourself to the discipline to maintain that delight.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's really nice that you've kind of found that one thing that makes you tick. In terms of finding meaning in life and purpose. And it sounds like that's religion's definitely been a huge part of that for you. So
yeah.
And wedding photography and teaching people photography has always been a big part, but now you're making a segue to do something else, a different kind of photography.
Yes.
And that is Wavescape photography.
Yeah.
So how did you fall into that, and what was the beginning of that story of how that began and how it took form into what it is now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. It's kind of come full circle because, I got started in photography with shooting my friend surfing.
Yeah.
And I do waves as well. And then we moved up to the Central Coast. And so I'd always go to the Pismo Pier or whatever and take pictures here and there. But I realized, wow, this is really cool. I tapped into, there's another photographer, his name's Max Wenger.
Okay.
And Kate Holstein. Those were two, they did a lot of ocean work, but one thing that stood out to me is their work was very minimal. It was, especially with Max's work, it was very, he had a lot of negative space in his work. And there was something about seeing their work that just really inspired me because I guess my goal is not to photograph things that I've seen 100 different times before. I didn't want to just make another ocean picture that looked like a typical postcard. So I started asking myself, what can I do to differentiate the way I photograph a wave? And a lot of that was through the use of negative space, minimalism, and then light. The light I gravitated to was more of a pastel kind of light, and it's the way I process my work as well. I try to keep it simple, but it tends to be a little bit more minimal and have those beautiful, subtle pastel colors that are natural and not oversaturated. I think a part of the whole digital realm is that you see pictures that are just so laser beam crisp and pure and focused and somewhat even oversaturated. And to me, I wanted my work to have a little bit more soul, almost like I was using film again. And so it was a real beautiful thing how like here I started with wave or surfing photography, then I did wedding portraits and such, and then here I started doing wave work, and I love it. Even though we live in the North County, I'll go over the hills. In fact, I did yesterday to Cayucas, and I love that little beach town up there.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
I love it out there.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I've had a chance to check out your website before you came in, and also the day before that. And one thing that was really remarkable to me was the style. There was such a consistent personality to each photo, and it wasn't just one dimension of the photo. Like, for example, the color palette's very consistent across the board, but also there's this sort of energy or feeling you get from looking at it, and it's how do I describe it? If I were to just be in this really calm headspace and I were to look at that, I would notice how I react. And then I look at the next photo, and the reaction's different but very similar. And it's a very consistent feeling of this sort of calm flow. And
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Yet somehow deep at the same time, and it's deep and calm. There we go. Yeah, calm depth.
Yeah, I like that. Very good.
It's like a sophisticated kind of calm.
Yeah.
At least that's the impression that it gave me. So
yeah, less is more.
Less is definitely more.
Yeah.
So with all this talk and teasing, for those who are listening, we have to tell them the website.
Sure, it's davidpascollaprints.com.
And that's spelled DavidPascolla
PRINTS.com.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's my Instagram as well.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else like Snapchat or TikTok?
No,
just
I haven't.
Instagram.
Yeah, I love Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a visual person. I'm not really a writer.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It just worked for me.
Yeah. And as well, no Facebook or anything like that too? Or just
minimal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but the Instagram has just really turned in, like most people that buy my work just find me right on Instagram, and it could link right to my print store.
Okay.
So that's good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. So what else we got on the list today? We covered a lot of that stuff. When it came to the second page, though, what do we got? Your technical style, your editing approach. We covered all those things too. And the 4 books you like, I think the easiest one to predict, especially for you, is the Bible.
Yeah.
Religion's very important to you.
Yeah.
But the next one we have is The Artist Way. Do you want to tell us about that book?
Sure. That was written by Julia Cameron several years ago, and it's kind of like a seminal book for artists. Just she talks about things that artists could struggle with, like perfectionism.
Yeah.
She talks a lot about artists. She calls them artist dates, like just taking yourself out on a date, just like going out for yogurt and taking a book with you and just kind of hanging out and chilling and getting recharged. And I'd love her. I mean, it's a pretty heavy duty book, and it could take you 2 years to work your way through it if you just took little chunks at a time.
2 years.
Yes.
Wow. Did you get through it all?
I did several times.
Really?
I reread it, and it's an amazing book. Highly recommended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. How did you find out about that book?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
It just fell into your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely worth a check out. Yeah.
Definitely.
And I'm not saying everybody's going to take 2 years to read it, but the way I read things, it could be like I might read a half of a paragraph and journal what I just read and just camp out on that for a week or something until it really becomes a part of me.
Yeah.
So I'm never in a race to, go through material or books.
I heard the word journal. Do you journal?
I journal. Michael, I journal every day. And so check this out. This is really cool. I journal. And but before I haven't been as regimented about tying the dates up, but stay with me here. So here's what I do.
I think this explains everything.
Yeah.
This is why I get the vibe that you're mindful.
What I do is, so I get, today's the 10th. So we'll say of February. So I have last year's journal out, and I open up to the 10th day of February 2021, and I read that entry before I write today's entry. And it's fascinating, the things that you read that you wrote a year ago to the day. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just wild. Some of the things that came to fruition, some of the things you're still struggling with. And in fact, one time I actually read, so let's say again, I had a dream on the 10th day of February 2021. Okay. And then, so I wake up this morning and I had a dream last night. And this only happened one time, but I looked at last year's entry on the very same night. I had the same exact dream.
No.
Yes. Isn't that wild?
Do you mind sharing what the dream was, or was it personal?
This happened like 5 years ago. I don't even remember what the dream was, but
wow.
The fact of the matter is it happened a year ago to the day, the same exact dream.
It has to be something with the universe.
It does. So the bottom line is, yes, I love to journal. There's just something when I'm reading something and I'm writing it down. Yeah. It embeds itself in my memory. Some people don't need that, but the way my brain works, I need that.
Yeah.
And so the more I'm always writing things down, and then. Again, we'll write things down in our journal and we kind of forget about it. But that's why I like going back a year and seeing what I actually wrote. And it's fascinating.
So
love journaling.
I have a confession to you,
David. Yeah.
I do the same thing.
You're kidding me.
No.
You read last year's journal first, or you're talking about your passion for journaling?
I do the exact same thing. I'm not kidding.
I've never met anybody that's done that.
I have a 10-year journal.
Wow.
And it has 10 entries for every single page.
Yeah.
And you open it up and you have like January 1st, let's say 2013 in my case.
Yeah.
It's at the very top. And it has a couple of paragraphs of space, so I can write there, and then a year later, I'm on that same page, but I go one entry down, and now it's like January 1st, 2014, 2015, 2000. Like you just keep going down until you have basically 10 years worth of entries on one page.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm on year 8, so I have 8 years of that day to look back on.
Oh wow!
Oh man, it is like therapy.
I could imagine
to just go back to all that.
Wow, that's taken like what I've been doing and even going many, many steps deeper.
I'm not trying to one-up you.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Like,
oh, that's cool.
My story. And
wow. Yeah.
It's a great book. It was like the best. I was like $40 or something like that of an investment. But like,
I'll have to look into one of those.
I'll give you the link.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've actually never met anyone that has done the same thing. I mean, just the concept of looking at the previous year.
Yeah. I think it's really good to review where we've been, where we're going. And sometimes, maybe we've met some of our goals and ambitions, desires. Sometimes we haven't, but yeah. It's good to do.
Yeah. For me personally, like when I look at my journal entries, sometimes it's a matter of like an exercise of forgiving myself, because I'll say a goal and I'll look at it and I'll be like, I didn't quite make that goal. Yeah. And then I have to sit with that feeling of like seeing how I felt with that realization that I had this beautiful dream of whatever this is and I didn't get there. And I have to be like, that's okay.
Right.
And learning that acceptance of accepting my past and the struggles that I had, or maybe the goals that I didn't meet, makes it so much easier. That acceptance makes it so much easier to move forward and keep trying at that goal.
Yes.
As opposed to holding that guilt in and internalizing that and letting that affect my ability to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
So for
me,
me,
grace.
a lot of, I mean, for me, a lot of Yeah, a lot of self-forgiving and
That's super.
yeah,
I love that.
cool.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Okay, so one question I love asking photographers
Yeah.
is, what's one other photographer that really inspires you?
Well, gosh, so many. There's one guy in our community, Cameron Ingalls. I love
Yes.
Cameron. We've been friends forever,
I've
even though we don't see one another a lot. But
never met him. I've always wanted to meet that guy.
yes, he's kind of spearheaded the community of love in this industry.
Right.
Yes.
He had like a lot of pink associated with his website a while back.
Yes, yeah. In fact, I think his tagline was something about recording moments with love or something like that. But it was he heads up the wedding standard.
Okay.
Even though I'm not a part of that, but I was for several years. But it's all about networking and sharing the love. And yeah, I've always really admired Cameron. He's an awesome guy.
Wow.
And it's funny, when he was first starting, I remember he came over for dinner and he was kind of picking my brain, and then one thing led to another, and boy, he just took off with that.
Really?
Yes, he's a very successful businessman, family man, and just an amazing guy. He's a real lover.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I wonder what his Enneagram is.
Yeah, I couldn't even guess.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to
impose or anything.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I would say in the wedding community, Cameron, he's just an awesome guy. He's just a real rock star. Love that guy. And then I shared Max Wenger and Kate Holstein. They're the people that inspired me a lot with my wave photography.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So Cameron Ingalls, that's interesting. Yeah, I've always known about that guy. I've always heard about that guy. He actually shot a friend of mine. His name is Jerome Law.
Okay.
And he shot the wedding for him. And
yeah,
Cameron's a great guy. The wedding photographer that I really have always looked up to.
Yeah.
And this guy got me interested in the first place. I remember emailing him back in 2007.
Yeah.
Was Jeff Newsom.
Sure. Jeff and Cameron are real good friends.
Really?
Or they were. I don't know if they still are.
Yeah.
I haven't kind of followed up on that.
Okay, cool. That's great.
Yeah, Jeff, I even had Jeff come up and he was a guest speaker. I had Cameron as a guest speaker, but Jeff is a graduate of Atascadero High School.
Was he one of your students?
No, I think he was there before I came to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what the
but
age.
He never took photography.
What?
He never did.
Just
no.
Didn't go to school
I think he did. He took some art classes, but yeah, he's in another stratosphere in regards to his style, and he's known worldwide. About
Jeff is.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I think Jeff, he kind of has I call it an uncommon grace. I think he was born with just an uncommon grace to do what he does, to have the vision that he has. It's easy to look at someone's work and think, oh my gosh, I'm not even close to that. But, it all boils down to we all have our gifts and abilities, and we could just rest in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be thankful for what we do have. Yeah.
I think that's the key, not to look at... how does the saying go? I'm not too familiar at all with any of the biblical verses. But not to envy the person's neighbor or their house or whatever it is.
Sure.
Do you remember that? One?
Well, yeah. Basically, just the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
There we go.
Basically. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that that's a great. I mean, we covered so much good stuff, and
good.
There's one, you know what? This is a really great question. There's one question I was going to ask you, and it has to do with the types of questions that people ask when they're getting to know you as a potential wedding photographer. Although you don't really do weddings now, but if they were to hire you as a wedding photographer, what's one question that people who are getting married should ask a wedding photographer, but usually don't ask?
Besides, like, what's your style or
Yeah.
what your fee is.
Yeah. Maybe a question that's not very common.
Mm-hmm. I would say, why are you doing what you're doing? Why would you love to shoot our wedding?
Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you love to shoot our
Yeah.
wedding? What would be your answer to that?
I would just say, I'd like to get to know the couple first.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you don't really have that privilege of other than emailing back and forth or chatting on the phone. But I would just say, I really, really enjoy what I do. I love to record life. I love to document love and life. I want to document the experience of your day. And I want to do it as naturally as possible. And I want you to go away feeling like, wow, that was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a great answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I had mentioned was when people see that you truly love doing what you're doing and you're really having a fun time doing it, they sense that. And it really does set you apart from somebody that's just doing it for the money or doing it for the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think whether it's, wedding photography, being a creative, whatever you're doing, if you have a stoke about it, if you have a passion about it, if you could say, hey, that thing that I'm doing brings me to life,
Mm-hmm.
then people recognize that. People notice that. And I've learned too, just in my creative venture, that I try not to look at things, even with my Wavescape photography. Sometimes I'll have several sales in 1 week, and then sometimes I could go 3 weeks and not have a single inquiry. But so what I do is I try to look at it not as like a mountaintop experience, like when I do get a couple good sales and I'm feeling great, and then all of a sudden it gets real quiet. And that could pertain to, wedding, whatever it is, whatever business you have. So then I started trying to look at it as rolling hills as opposed to peaks and valleys, and realized that, you know what? Some days are going to be more fruitful than others in regards to sales, and then it might be quiet for a little bit, but I could actually look at it as more rolling hills. So my emotions aren't going really high when I have a great sale or book a wedding. And then when I'm not, they don't go really low. But it's more of an even, steady kind of thing, just resting in that all things are going to pan out in their time the way they should pan out, the way it was meant to pan out. And I could rest in that. I could rest in that kind of flow state, you might say, that I don't have to be in a hurry for success.
Yeah.
Because as long as I'm doing what brings me to life, success is going to come in its own way. And in fact, yesterday I was reading out of it was Elizabeth Gilbert's book. It's called Big Magic. Highly recommended book. But she had this.
Oh yeah, so one of the books on your list.
Yeah. She called it a divine collision of creative communion. A divine collision of creative communion. And
Okay.
so, meaning that, if let's say you're a writer or whatever, and you're submitting books to various people to read and nothing happens. But if you just stay at it, and keep putting yourself out there, that one of these days you will have success when it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
And hence that divine collision of creative communion, which I just love the way she put that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of rest in that, and I kind of liken it to there's this concept called convergence, and
Is this also in the book?
No, this wasn't. This is something I picked up many years ago from I don't know who, but anyway, he was talking about how it's like a convergence is when your day of preparation meets your day of opportunity, and they kind of crisscross, and that's convergence. And so it's all going to unravel and unfold in its time and its way.
Yeah.
And with the knowledge of that comes a lot of rest and peace, that we don't have to go out and really conjure anything up. We could just rest and be the best that we can, enjoy what we're doing, and it's all going to come together when it's meant to come together.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, David, I think that wraps it up for the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And before we wrap up, if you want to do a shout out to anybody in particular that comes to mind, you're welcome to do it now. And we can give a little plug too for whatever websites that you have and Instagram handles and stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Go for it.
And I want to say it's been an honor being interviewed by you, Michael. Yeah.
This is your first podcast.
Yeah, first one. Yeah, you made me feel very at ease, and yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I think we have kindred spirits.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, just if anybody wants to find me on my Wavescape Photography, again, davidpascolaprints.com. David Pascolla Prints would be my Instagram handle as well.
Okay.
And then, of course, I do weddings and portraits and families and all that as well.
Which website would they go to?
That would just be davidpascolla.com.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And is there anyone you'd like to do a shout out for?
My wife, the lover of my life. Just love that gal. She's been an ardent supporter of my creative endeavors, and we're completely. She's more left brain. I'm more right brain, and it's like this creative tension sometimes. But she's been a supporter of my creativity and my work, and love her to death. So my lovely wife, Stacy.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Stacy.
Yeah, go Stacy.
Yeah. All right, David. Well, that wraps it up. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Michael.